Would you live in a haunted house? If so, just how many ghosts would be too many to put up with? What if you had small children who were terrorized every single night by one or more of these entities? How much would be too much? Or would you take it in stride? Because that's just the way things are in these parts. Let's talk to Steve, who tells us of his terrifying experiences from when he was a child living in a haunted house in the 50s. Today on Homespun Haints. Welcome everybody to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
And I'm Diana.
And today on the show we have Steve, who is...
Sorry.
You want to start over?
No, it's okay. I've got editing software. It's always a little bit of a party wherever Diana is. Steve, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay, so you're in the same neck of the woods as where Diana lives.
That's correct, yes.
I don't currently live in any one particular geographic location, but I am currently staying in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is also my hometown.
Okay, so Diana, you're a little bit nomadic, which I guess explains why there's sometimes these random other people that appear out of nowhere on the show while we're recording.
You know, just hearing about haunted places in Tulsa kind of makes me go, well, where was that when I was when I was a kid and interested in that? When I started my first business, I actually had a location that was across the street from the most haunted place in Tulsa. So my front windows had a full-on panoramic view of the most haunted location in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Did you see anything?
No, I put a lot of agua on the front of the building so that I wouldn't see anything.
You put a lot of foie gras on the windows?
No, that would be gross. Bagua. It's a feng shui thing where it's an 8-sided mirror that's supposed to reflect anything negative that comes at you. You put it on the entryway or something in the front of the building.
Say that again, because I'm still hearing foie gras.
Bagua.
Bagua, okay. So not enlarged goose liver.
No, not at all.
Okay. Ew, that would be so gross.
After a few days,
smear.
We certainly didn't have any haunted experiences at that location. Well, I mean,
at the second location I did.
At the second location? Okay, hang on. Amber has a ghost story.
Okay. Hang on a second, Steve. We'll get to you in just a second. For the record, everybody, Amber was Diana's employee at the time? Is that?
Yes, I was working at Diana's clinic in a very pedestrian part of Tulsa. Certainly nothing like creepy or anything like that about the building. But there was this one evening where I had to stop in because I had forgotten something or had to process something. But whatever the case, I was there by myself. There was nobody else in the building. And I was in the front part of the building, and then there was a very long hallway leading back to the back. And something just made me look down the hallway, and I saw a man walk across the hallway into the bathroom. And like I said, I knew there was nobody else in the building or anything like that, so I was just like, okay, I'm going to go on home now.
Did you look to see if there was anyone in the bathroom? Did you actually go check it out?
Well, I mean, like the bathroom doors were open and I had to walk past them to get out to the back door where my car was. So yeah, there was nobody else in the building.
And there was a motion detector alarm, right?
Well, I mean, that would have been off because I was inside the building, but it's not like somebody could have broken in while I was not there because yeah, there would have been a motion alarm that would have triggered.
Oh my goodness. Is this the only time you ever saw anything like that in the building?
You know, there were some other times where I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye when there was nobody else in that area, but that was the only time that it really seemed like I saw somebody. And I don't want to say that, oh, it was a man that was 6'5" and he was wearing a blazer, and it was not that clear. It was just the dark shape of like a man.
Did he have a hat on?
Not that I recall. Though perhaps, who knows?
Ooh.
Oh, man. Wow. I am especially surprised by this story.
Did I forget to tell you about that?
I believe you forgot to tell me about that.
Oh my goodness, Diana, you had no idea.
I had no idea. This is the first time ever hearing about it.
Okay, so Diana, you worked in a haunted hotel, you lived in your mom's haunted basement, and apparently you ran a haunted clinic, but you had no idea of the latter.
Did not know. Wow, this is weird. Okay, so
Wait, now, is this the place that you, like, had smeared the goose liver all over the windows?
no,
or
this is the second location.
See, Diana, Tulsa is haunted after all. Well, anyway, as I said, we have Steve on the show with us, and he is going to tell us quite a few stories today.
I don't know quite a few, but I have several I guess I could tell you about.
Okay, well, several's better than one.
Y'all don't mind if I have a little grape juice, do you?
It lubricates the tongue.
Okay.
Now, do all these stories take place in Tulsa?
Yeah, they're gonna take place in Tulsa. I was born in Tulsa in 1952. I had two older brothers and two younger sisters that were in a small house on the north side of Tulsa until I was about 5 years old. My dad was Irish Catholic, so I assume he knew he was going to have a couple more or 2 or 3 more, so he had to look for a bigger house. He with 7 in the house at that time, there just wasn't room for the family. He started looking for a house in the old downtown section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. This neighborhood was called Maple Ridge. It was a lot of old stately homes that were built in the 1920s. And so he found a house that was built in 1928. And so when I was 4 years old, he bought the house and moved the family to this new residence. It was a large home, 3 stories, 2 above ground, a full basement, and it was built in 1928. It still had a old coal-fired stove in the basement for heating. That's how old it was. But part of the story, I want to make sure that this comes out clear, is that the house that he bought was owned by 3 widow women. All of their husbands had died, and they were in their 90s at the time. It was time for them to go to a nursing home or something, so Dad bought the house from him, and we moved in there shortly thereafter.
So all 3 women were living there at the same time?
Yeah, all 3,
Okay.
without a husband. Yeah, all their husbands had passed away. Now, I found this out from my dad because obviously he knew them as the owners, but I never really met them or knew anything about them per se. We moved in the house. It was a really dark, dank house at the time. You can imagine this was 1956, and they'd been living in it, I assume, since it was new in 28. So that's 30 years of just really quite elderly people living in the home. My dad was a hard worker. He decided that he was going to remodel the entire house eventually. And so we started doing things like peeling off wallpaper in the living room. That was literally 10 layers thick. They just wallpapered over wallpaper for about a decade or more. So it was a mess. Everything was dark, and it was kind of spooky being a young kid. I was about 5 years old at the time. I started in kindergarten that year, and I was going to a Catholic school. My mom and dad were very religious, and they didn't overprotect us, but we certainly had a good, strong upbringing in the Catholic faith. We slept upstairs. Me and my brother shared a bedroom, and my bed was directly across from the door of the bedroom, and his was over in the other corner. About 3rd grade, when I was probably about 8 years old, I wasn't afraid of the dark. There wasn't anything that really scared me to speak of. But I woke up one morning. I don't know if it was 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or the witchy hour. But I look in my doorway and there's a man standing there, and he's about as tall as a doorway. Your normal doorway is about what, 6'8" or something like that? So he was every bit of probably 6'5", and he was completely white, like a ghost. And he was wearing a World War I bomber jacket with a helmet, aviation helmet.
Whoa.
And he was just standing in my doorway, hands down by his side, and he was just looking at me. Now, when you're 8 years old, that's a pretty scary sight to see that standing in your bedroom doorway.
That's a scary sight regardless.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I had been influenced by movies or anything like The Mummy. Sure, The Mummy was out in 1924, I think. But if I was afraid of the dark and I was going to see something, well, why not see The Mummy instead of a World War I aviator?
Right.
And so it really frightened me. This went on perpetually every night for probably about 3 years. He never came towards me that I'm aware of. But obviously, being as frightened as I would cover up my head. And then shortly thereafter, at some point in time, I would feel sharp fingernails on my skull, like this.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And so I felt these sharp fingernails digging into my skull. And, I don't know if it was him, if he died in the house or that particular bedroom, and they hadn't cut his fingernails in a while, and he had long nails. I wasn't going to uncover my head to see what was there because I was just frightened stiff. I'd feel it for a long time until finally I was able to sort of just ignore it and go back to sleep. But it was there, steady pressure. I was wide awake. I would wake every night. It was probably around the same time and look in that doorway and see that World War I aviator standing there looking at me. I told my two older brothers, they were a year or two older than me, about it. Of course, they teased me and made fun and thought it was all a big joke until years later, they felt the sharp fingernails on their head. And then they became somewhat believers in what I was trying to tell them, that the house was haunted. And I truly believe that there was at least the ghost of the aviator there, but perhaps a second, more malevolent spirit of some kind that maybe wanted to do you harm. I just don't know.
Oh my goodness. So are you thinking that the fingernails might have been a different spirit and the aviator was there to kind of guard over it?
It could have been. My two older brothers, they heard noises at night and things in their closets. It was a very old house. The closets had these kind of offset areas in them that they were about chest high, and then they go way back in to the attic and make a turn. And they would hear noises back in there at times as we were growing up. But that was kind of the spirit of the entire neighborhood. I had a friend that lived down the road that his grandfather had died in one of these old homes, and they'd be eating dinner in their living room, and his grandfather loved to shoot pool, and they'd hear the pool balls breaking in the basement downstairs. Maybe it was just part of that time and period, people dying in their homes and their spirits not leaving this world or something of that nature, But this went on for about 3 years. Of course, I was terrified at times to go to bed. I would cry and talk to my mom and dad about it, primarily my mom. They just weren't believers. They didn't think that it was anything but my imagination. So I guess it was probably 5 or 6 years later after these visions stopped. They stopped when I was probably 9 or 10, somewhere in that age group where you kind of outgrow. People tell you, well, you're just seeing things. That's a superstition. So that ability to see a spirit kind of fades away. And so I quit seeing them. But my dad decided that he wanted to renovate the basement and turn it into partial living quarters, kind of a TV room. And so the house had a big porch. You've seen these houses that sort of the big columns that have a big porch coming out on front. Well, down the basement, there was an arch in the brickwork, and that arch was bricked in, but it went underneath the front porch. My dad was curious, and so we took the brickwork out of the arch and climbed inside to take a look at what we might find underneath the porch. And I don't know how long that porch had been bricked up under there, but obviously for a long time. And so we found a couple of old chests, the old type of shipping chests that you might have back in the day. And we drug them out and we opened them up, and there were letters from all over Europe to these ladies that lived in the house. I can't remember. We looked at a few, but we were only 10, 11 years old. We didn't care, but we definitely were intrigued by the stamps from England. And so putting two and two together, I'm assuming that their husbands were in the World War I campaign that started in like 1914. That house was built in 1928. So if you kind of add the links together, you could see where they were in the campaign, they came back, they died in the house. And that's where the letters originated, was while they were in World War I.
Wow. Why do you think they bricked up the letters?
I don't really know. Probably they were all kept because the wives that were there waiting for their husbands to get home from the campaign wanted to keep those because they were valuable to them. They had a lot of meaning. I'm assuming they kept all the letters just as part of their treasures. Now, why they bricked them up, I have no idea. But that's about all we found under there. We didn't find any bones or any graves or anything like that. But it kind of connects the timeline with the house and my seeing an aviator in my bedroom door every night.
Oh, that's crazy. Whoa. Did you have any other experiences in that house? I mean, you said your siblings had experiences a little bit later than you.
Yeah, I mean, they did, but they talked vaguely about it. Yeah, we heard some noises. We thought it was haunted, but they didn't see an actual ghost like I had been seeing. I mean, a lot of children have that capability at an early age. Wouldn't you agree, Becky?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's been the subject of several of our earlier episodes, things that we have seen ourselves and our children have reported seeing.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'm sorry, go to bed. Go to bed. I don't care what the cat's doing. You need to go to bed right now. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
I was trying very subtly to be like,
Yeah.
What's the cat doing, Becky?
Are they listening to my ghost story? Is that why?
no, they can't hear you, which is
Okay,
fine.
good. So anyway, that's kind of the extent of the house. Was very, very spooky in terms of the way it was laid out and the decor that we inherited from these three ladies. And, I've always wanted to go back and look at the land records, which wouldn't be hard to do because if they were in the house in 28, and probably they were the original owners. See if I could do some research trying to tag back to their husbands and whether or not they were in the service in the Air Force in World War I. That would be something I'd like to do.
That would be excellent.
Yeah.
If you do dig anything like that up, we have a website. We'd love to include that.
Definitely.
I'd love to validate it in that way.
Well, I'm curious how you feel it affected you as a little boy of 5 years old growing up with this presence so aggressively touching you and appearing to you.
It didn't start when I was 5. It started when I was probably 7 or 8, in 3rd or 4th grade when it started.
Okay, so this was after you moved in.
Yeah, we'd been there for a couple of years and then it started. It was really, really scary, especially the sharp fingernails on the head.
Yeah.
Because I would cover completely up, and then the next thing I know, there'd be these on my head. I don't know if it was a malevolent spirit that lived there that really had some ill intentions. I mean, if it wanted to hurt me, I guess it could have very easily in some form. If I had been more older and mature, I would have jerked back the covers and taken a look at what the heck it was. Plus, just like the spirit standing in the door, if I had been older and not so scared of the unknown, I probably would have got out of bed and walked over there and spoken to it, But those opportunities are lost, so I'll never know. Maybe someday I'll meet the guy that was standing in my doorway, right? And if he's upstairs with me, I don't want to be downstairs with him, that's for sure.
Steve, I'm curious because you said nobody believed you, your siblings, your parents just kept telling you it's in your head. How do you feel it affects kids when their parents deny these kind of situations? Do you think parents should talk to their kids about stuff like this or try and downplay it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a parent, an educated parent, could tell the difference between a nightmare, a recurring nightmare, or perhaps a vision of something that's so odd and out of the ordinary. If my parents would have set me down and asked me, well, what does it look like? I think I probably had told them that it looks like an aviator in a World War I bomber jacket and a helmet. But they just weren't really attentive to that need of mine. There was 7 of us. And so when you have 7 kids, you can't really place a lot of attention on any one child. And so it makes it difficult. I love my mom and dad with all my heart, but their ability to have time to show affection, one-on-one affection and communication just wasn't really there in the sense that a much smaller family might have a much closer relationship. I hated to go to bed at night. I honestly did. Not only did I hate to go to bed, but I hated to go to sleep because the anticipation of knowing that I was going to wake up at whatever hour it was and see this ghost in my doorway was not something I look forward to. Maybe I have a little more spiritual side to me. I was born at 3:33 a.m. in the morning. Okay.
I was too.
Were you really?
Oh,
I believe I was.
3:33 has a lot of meaning in a spiritual sense. Maybe I'm an old soul that's been here many times, and I'm hoping I'm maybe at the point where I can move up to the next level, if there is a next level. I really don't want to come back to this earth and participate in this experience again.
Time for a promotion.
I'd much rather move on to another challenge of some kind, if that's the way it works. I never told anyone outside of our family. If your mom and dad won't believe you, then why would you think your friends are going to believe you? So I just lived with it. It was difficult.
but now you did say that your brothers eventually did experience the feelings of the fingernails on their heads,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
How long would you say that that went on for them? Do you know? Was it once or
It happened to him.
twice?
It happened to him at least more than twice, because when I talked to them about it, they sort of confirmed, yeah, it happened to us and we didn't like it a bit.
Did you talk to them about it after you'd moved out of that house or while you're still living there?
I don't think they fessed up until we were probably older, out of the house. Decided to fess up and let me know that they had felt it as well. I'd already been through the agony of putting up with that for so many years at night that it kind of gave me validation that maybe there was something in that house that was perhaps not a good spirit. We don't know how many people may have passed in the house over the years. There could have been certainly more than one that I was witnessing. It was a horrible war. So those guys came home and their spirits may have been in really, really bad shape.
Did the cessation of this experience coincide with unbricking the wall and finding the letters? Did that happen around the same time?
No, I don't think so. I was 12, 13, 14 when my dad started to remodel that downstairs. So it was 3 or 4 years after I saw the vision.
You decided that you didn't want to see it anymore. You were too old.
Yeah, I just think, it kind of melted away, my ability to see him, because I didn't want to see him. Believe me, every night I did not want to see him, did not want to wake up. I made it go away, essentially, by aging, I guess. But I wish I hadn't now.
I don't think anyone can fault you for not trying to talk to him.
Right.
Terrifying. Most grown adults would probably just cower in fear and hope it goes away as well.
Well, that's probably true. I mean, if I woke up tonight and saw something like that in my doorway, I'd probably cover my head up and wait for the sharp fingernails to dig into the house. Oh, yeah, let me tell you this. This is not my story, but it's my mother's, okay?
Okay.
Same old house. My mother's in the dining room or kitchen, and she sees someone walking through the house from where she was standing. It was like a man in dark clothes. And she swears on the Bible that she saw this person running through the house. But of course, there wasn't anyone there. The doors were locked, and it's just something that she can't explain. Maybe it was something there in that house besides just the person I saw. Maybe there was a dark spirit running through there of some kind.
So you've basically identified 3 separate spirits, 3 dead husbands.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Did you ever have any other encounters that you think may or may not have? I mean, you said you were born at 3:33 a.m. There might be something special about your ability to see things. So did you ever see anything later on that you can recall?
My brother Stan, he was very close to me. He passed. He was only 60 years old at the time. So I had a dream. I mean, it wasn't really a dream. I was awake. It was early morning, probably around 6, 7 a.m. But I was awake. I hadn't opened my eyes to get up yet. I heard my brother. I heard his voice. I didn't see him. I just heard his voice. And he said something to me, called my name. And I said, Stan, is that you? And he said, yes. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I've been stacking rocks all day. And I said, stacking rocks? And he said, yes. And I said, well, have you seen God yet? And he said, no. At the end of that conversation, I opened my eyes, and it was so real just hearing his voice. And I didn't know what to make of the stacking rocks and having not seen God yet. The Catholic religion believes you can go to limbo before you go to heaven in that first stage if you've not purified your soul. There's penance that has to be done. And if you look in the Old Testament, all of the altars and temples to sacrifice the lamb on were built of rocks being stacked. So I could only make the assumption that he hadn't quite gotten there yet, and he was stacking rocks as part of his penance, perhaps building his own altar to heaven so that he could eventually get there. It wasn't a dream. It was actually a conversation that I had with my older brother. This is probably a couple of months after he'd passed away.
When you heard his voice, were you frightened, or
No,
was it just very
no,
comforting?
Yeah, it was comforting. I loved him dearly. He and I were very close. He'd come up to our fish camp every weekend with us and fish. He had a lot of physical ills. He had terrible heart disease and artery disease. He actually agreed to very high risk surgery, and the surgery was so high risk that he passed on the table. But it was very comforting to hear his voice. Of course, I was worried about him. He was kind of out there, a hellraiser, and had his share of fun in life and what you might consider sins. But in his older years, he had come to realize that he'd matured and become a different person. And we loved him dearly, and he passed. And it was great to hear from him. It really was. So I put out a word of prayer to all the family. Let's pray for Stan. He may be in purgatory. We need to get him up to the next level. Hopefully he's not stacking rocks anymore. I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard from him since then.
It's probably a good sign.
Yeah, I was really hoping I'd hear from my mom and dad. My mom and dad both passed away last year, 31 days apart. They had been married 67 years. I'm really hoping I hear from them at some point in time, at least one of them. Maybe I'll hear from them right before it's my time to go join up.
Yeah,
that'd be nice, because they say that the spirits come and escort you and give you some guidance. Nothing would be more confirming and reassuring than to have your mom and dad there.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, y'all.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was really intense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm
Very
glad
much.
you enjoyed it. I mean, it's all true. I didn't make up anything along the way.
No.
It's all fact.
Bonus.
Yeah.
I think you can tell when it's
Right.
coming from the heart or when it's just being made up on the fly. It's interesting what you said about family being there. My grandmother passed about a month ago. A couple days before she went, she kept telling my mother that she was seeing my grandfather, who died several years before that.
Right.
That's all she could talk about. Oh, Bill's here. Bill's
Yeah.
saying hi, that kind of thing. And my mother, believing the way she did, I'm sure she saw that as a sign.
Oh yeah,
We knew it was time.
That's really a great thing to have your grandmother see that vision, know what's coming, be able to make that transition easily from one stage to the spirit.
Yes.
Those things are meaningful. At least they are to me. I love to research that kind of stuff. I'm a big believer in near-death experiences that people have. They're so consistent in their testimony and what they see and what they feel, the light, the peace, the love, not wanting to come back, but being told at times that they have to come back because their purpose isn't fulfilled yet. Those are powerful, powerful tales, and it really makes you think. So behave yourselves, ladies. Behave. Don't let those bad thoughts creep into your head.
I'm not very good at moving rocks, so I'll have to be good here.
Yeah.
There are no levers in purgatory.
I'm hoping that I have special powers and I could just move that rock with my,
There you go.
There you go. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, but stacking them?
Well, Steve, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed speaking to you about it. I like to tell my tale because it has some ability to inspire people to a certain degree in believing and having faith that there's life after death. Not only when it's spooky, but when it's a good message, like from my brother. There's two sides to that coin, If something else happens, I'll let you know. And tonight I'll see my mom and dad both.
So we can say to be continued.
I hope that's true.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Becky and Diana, for speaking to me. I enjoyed the conversation and look forward to maybe doing it again.
Thank you, Steve. Definitely.
And thanks, everybody. That's our show. This is Homespun Haints, and we just heard from Steve and Amber and Diana, all relaying some really creepy tales from Tulsa. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many others. You can also join the conversation on Facebook at Homespun Haints or on our website at homespunhaints.com. Also, we're on Instagram at Homespun Haints, and you can get on there and tag your photos, #HomespunHaints, so that we will find them.
And until next time, have a spooky day. Cue piano.